Continuing with the lecture on a temporary matter. "What's all this?" Shobha said when she came downstairs. Her hair was wrapped in a thick white towel. She undid the towel and draped it over a chair, allowing her hair, damp and dark, to fall across her back. As she walked absently towards the stove, she took out a few tangles with her hair. She wore a clean pair of sweatpants, a t-shirt, an old flannel robe. Her stomach was flat again, her waist narrow before the flare of her hips, the belt of her robe tied in a floppy knot. Now Shobha descended the stairs and came down after taking a bath. It was nearly 8, so they were nearing the time of the blackout. Shukumar put the rice on the table and the lentils from the night before into the microwave oven, punching the numbers on the timer. So Shukumar served the rice on the table, and then he put the lentils, the dal, from the day before into the microwave oven. So they were reheating the dal from the day before. "You made Rogan Josh," Shobha observed, looking through the glass lid at the bright paprika stew. So Shukumar had even served Rogan Josh. And Rogan Josh is a very difficult dish to prepare. So he had made Rogan Josh and Shobha was happy about it. And this is again a very ordinary conversation that you might have with the people living with you, right? "You made Rogan Josh," that's just an ordinary comment that she passed. Shukumar took out a piece of lamb, pincing it quickly between his fingers so as to not scald himself. Now Rogan Josh is made using lamb. So he quickly checked whether the lamb was well cooked, and he was careful enough not to burn his fingers, not to scald himself. He prodded a large piece with a serving spoon to make sure the meat slipped easily from the bone. So he pricked the meat with a spoon to make sure that the meat easily slipped from the bones. So if it is well cooked, the meat would slip from the bones. "It's ready," he announced. So it was just ready. The microwave had just beeped when the light went out. The music disappeared. So remember, he had kept lentils on the microwave. So the microwave just beeped, alarming them that the stew has been prepared or the lentils have been prepared when the lights went out and the music disappeared. So Shukumar had already placed a radio on the table, so even the music stopped because the light went out. "Perfect timing," Shobha said. "All I could find were birthday candles." He lit up the ivy. So Shukumar was a bit disgruntled because there weren't any candles in the home and Shobha didn't buy any candles. So he said that all that I could find were some birthday candles. And he lit up the ivy. Remember, he placed the candles on an ivy pot. So he lit up the ivy in which there was the candles, and he kept the rest of the candles on the table. "It doesn't matter," she said, running a finger along the stem of her wine glass. "It looks lovely." So she said that it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we don't have candles. These birthday candles look lovely. So she still is a romantic at heart. In the dimness, he knew how she sat, a bit forward in her chair, ankles crossed against the lowest rung, left elbow on the table. During his search for candles, Shukumar had found a bottle of wine in a crate he had thought was empty. He clamped the bottle between his knees while he turned in the corkscrew. He worried about spilling, and so he picked up the glasses and held them close to his lap while he filled them. They served themselves, stirring the rice with their forks, squinting as they extracted bay leaves and cloves from the stew. Every few minutes Shukumar lit a few more birthday candles and drove them into the soil of the pot. So it was pitch darkness, and there was the dim light that was emanating from the candles. And Shukumar pictured the way Shobha sat. She was leaning a bit forward in her chair, and her ankles crossed against the lowest rung of the chair. Her ankles were kept crossed, and she kept an elbow on the table, and she was leaning a bit forward. And while Shukumar was searching for the candles earlier, he had also found a bottle of wine in a crate, in a container, in a box, in a wooden box. So he took the wine and he tried to uh, take off the cork from the wine bottle using a corkscrew, and he was diligent enough to pour the wine without spilling it. He just wanted to pour the wine without making a mess. And then when they sat to eat, they slowly removed the bay leaves and the cloves from the curry, because bay leaves and cloves are added just to add fragrance and taste to the curry. It's not essential to have them, right? So they removed bay leaves and cloves from the stew. Every few minutes, Sukumar lit a few more birthday candles and drove them into the soil of the pot. So, since they only had birthday candles, the birthday candles would soon be depleted, right? So, it would soon melt off. The birthday candles are small, so it would soon melt off. So, Sukumar drove the birthday candles, new birthday candles, into the soil of the pot. It's like in India. It's like India, Shobha said, watching him tend his makeshift candelabra. So while he was trying to place the candles in the makeshift candelabra, because they didn't have a candle stand, so he had to make up with the ivy pot. So while he was arranging the candles in the makeshift candelabra, Shobha remembered that this is just like it was in India. This is just like it is in India. Sometimes the current disappears for hours at a stretch. I once had to attend an entire rice ceremony in the dark. The baby just cried and cried. It must have been so hot. So Shobha remembered that she had attended a rice ceremony back in India once, and at that time there was no current. And since it was a rice ceremony എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ചോറൂണ്. So since it was a rice ceremony, the baby who was being fed rice was crying and crying because of the humid climate, because it was hot inside. Now suddenly, our author makes us remember that their child never cried. Their baby had never cried, Sukumar considered. So Sukumar thought about it. Their baby was born as a stillborn, so their baby never cried. Their baby would never have a rice ceremony, even though Shobha had already made a guest list and decided on which of the three brothers she was going to ask to feed the child its first taste of solid food. At 6 months if it were a boy, and 7 if there was a girl. Again, the planning nature of Shobha is brought to the forefront. As I said earlier, Shobha was a woman who envisioned a well-planned life. She would plan everything in advance, even surprises. She would plan it in advance. And this is a recurrent theme throughout this short story. So Shobha had even planned about the rice giving ceremony of their newborn child. She had even planned a rice giving ceremony well in advance. And she even made a guest list, whom to invite and whom not to invite. And she decided which of her brothers would be giving the rice to the child. So in India, in different parts of India, the rice giving ceremony is also different. Here, the father feeds the child, the father of the child feeds the child, but there, the uncle feeds the child. So she had even decided which of her brothers would feed the child. And if it was a boy, then they would feed him when he reaches 6 months of age, and if it was a girl, they would feed her when she reaches 7 months of age. Now, since Shobha was talking about India and the humid climate of India, Sukumar asked her, "Are you hot? Are you feeling hot?" Because the curry might be hot and they are sitting with no electricity, no fan whatsoever. So he asked her, "Are you feeling hot? Or are you hot?" He pushed the blazing ivy pot to the other side of the table, closer to the piles of books and mail making it even more difficult for them to see each other. So now he placed the ivy pot in a position near to the books and the mails, the piles of books and the mails, so that now he would be able to avoid glancing Shobha's face. So he didn't want to see her. He was suddenly irritated that he couldn't go upstairs and sit in front of the computer. Suddenly he felt so irritated because he couldn't go upstairs and sit in front of the computers as he normally would do. Normally they would evade each other. He would go and have his lunch in front of the computer and she would have her lunch in front of the TV. Now since there was no electricity, they have to sit together. So he got a bit irritated that they have to face each other now. So he strategically placed the pot in such a position that he won't be gazing at Shobha directly. "No, it's delicious," she said, tapping her plate with her fork. "It really is." So Sukumar had asked her, was she feeling hot? But the reply that Shobha gives is that the food is delicious. So there is no connection between the question and the answer that she gives, right? So she says that food is delicious, it really is. So she's not even listening to what Sukumar is saying. He filled the wine in her glass. She thanked him. They weren't like this before. And then Sukumar remembered that they weren't like this before. Now he had to struggle to say something that interested her. Now it was a struggle even to strike up a conversation with each other. Something that made her look up from her plate or from her proofreading files. Now Sukumar had to struggle to speak something interesting to Shobha. Something that would make her look up from her work, look up from her plate, or look up from her proofreading files. So usually Shobha would just avoid Sukumar and his jokes and his conversations. It has become more and more of a struggle for them to communicate with each other. Eventually he gave up trying to amuse her. Eventually Sukumar gave up trying to amuse Shobha. He learned not to mind the silences, and he learned not to mind the silences that have crept over them. Now they don't speak with each other more often. Now they are more or less silent, and Sukumar has started loving the silences. I remember during power failures at my grandmother's house, we had to say something, Shobha continued. Now Shobha continued with her memories back in India. She says that I remember during power failures at my grandmother's house, we had to say something. Now, usually, at the time of load shedding here in India, people would just start speaking about random things, right? They would convene around in front of the candle or in front of an emergency lamp, and then they would start talking to each other. Sometimes they might sing a song. So this is a very common thing that's there in India. And Shobha said that during power failures at my grandmother's house, we were asked to say something. Sukumar could barely see her face, but from her tone, he knew her eyes were narrowed, as if trying to focus on a distant object. It was a habit of hers. Now Sukumar couldn't see her face, but he could see her eyes, and it was narrowed, as if she was trying to focus on something, as if she was trying to remember something. Now Sukumar asked, like what? So what was it that you were asked to speak? I don't know, a little poem, a joke. So Shobha said, I don't know. We were asked to recite a poem or tell a joke or tell a fact about the world. For some reason, my relatives always wanted me to tell them the names of my friends in America. And for some strange reason, Shobha was always asked to talk about her friends in America. Tell them the names of the friends in America. Usually, when children who are born and brought up in foreign countries, they come to visit their relatives in India. Normally, the relatives would ask them about the culture, right? About the country in which they are being brought up, about their friends. So Shobha was asked the name of her friends. I don't know why the information was so interesting to them. The last time I saw my aunt, she asked after 4 girls I went to elementary school with in Tuscan. I barely remember them now. So Shobha said that recently I saw an aunt and she asked about my friends in Tuscan. So she asked about her friends in elementary school at Tuscan. Now, Shobha had long forgotten about her friends in the elementary school, but still the aunt remembered about it. Shukumar hadn't spent as much time in India as Shobha had. His parents, who settled in New Hampshire, used to go back without him. The first time he had gone as an infant, he had nearly died of amoebic dysentery. Her father, a nervous type, was afraid to take him again in case something were to happen, and left him with his aunt and uncle in Concord. As a teenager, he preferred sailing camp or scooping ice cream during summers to going to Calcutta. It wasn't until his father died in his last year of college that the country began to interest him, and he studied its history from the course books as if it were any other subject. He wished now that he had his own childhood story of India. Now, Shukumar is again a second generation settler, and his parents were settled in New Hampshire and he seldom went to India. As an infant, his parents took him to India, but then he had an amoebic dysentery, and ever since then, his father didn't take him to India because his father feared that his son would contract some kind of a disease. So he was always sent to stay with his uncle or aunt when his parents went back to India, or he would be in a summer camp sailing or scooping ice creams. So he never went to Calcutta, only his parents went to Calcutta. It wasn't until after his father died in the last year of college that the country began to interest him. It was only after his father's death that the country began to interest him. He began to read about the history of India and he wished to go back to India. He wished he had a story to tell about India so that he could keep this conversation going. Let's do that, she said suddenly. So now Shobha is asking Shukumar to talk in the blackout. So let's do that, she said suddenly. Do what? Say something to each other in the dark. Like what? I don't know any jokes. No jokes. She thought for a minute. How about telling each other something we have never told before? I used to play this game in high school, Shukumar recalled, when I got drunk. You are thinking of truth or dare. This is different. Okay, I'll start. She took a sip of wine. The first time I was alone in your in your apartment, I looked in your address book to see if you had written me in. I think we had known each other for 2 weeks. Where was I? You went to answer the telephone in the other room. It was your mother, and I figured out it would be a long call. I wanted to know if you had promoted me from the margins of your newspaper. Had I? No, but I didn't give up on you. Now it's your turn. So now they have come up with a plan, and Shobha has come up with a plan. She has come up with a game that they would speak honestly to each other. Now Shukumar thinks that this is a game of truth and dare, but it's not like that. Truth or dare, Norena, it's again a game in which they will be spinning a bottle, and if the bottle is pointed towards you, the open end of the bottle is pointed towards you, then you need to choose between a truth or a dare. You need to either tell the truth or you should dare to do some terrible stunts. Now this was not a game of truth or dare, but Shobha was trying to reconnect with him. So she is asking him to tell something, tell something that she doesn't know, to tell a truth, an honest truth. And she is the one who starts the conversation. So she says that the first time she visited Shukumar's apartment, she checked whether he had written her name in the address book, that is in the telephone book. And the first time that she came to his apartment, at that time they were already dating and they were seeing each other for about 2 weeks. So she expected that he might have written her name and address in the address book or in the phone book. And Shukumar was nowhere around because he was speaking with his mother on the phone, so it was bound to be a long conversation, or so she thought. And she checked whether her name was written in the address book, but he didn't write the name. And when she stopped it, she asked Shukumar to say some truth. He couldn't think of anything, but Shobha was waiting for him to speak. She hadn't appeared so determined in months. What was there left to say to her? He thought back to their first meeting, 4 years earlier at a lecture hall in Cambridge. So they met each other in a lecture hall at Cambridge, where a group of Bengali poets were giving a recital. So a group of Bengali poets were reciting poems. They had ended up side by side on folding wooden chairs. Shukumar was soon bored. He was unable to decipher the literary diction and couldn't join the rest of the audience as they sighed and nodded solemnly after certain phrases. Peering at the newspaper folded in his lap, he studied the temperature of cities around the world: 91 degrees in Singapore, 51 in Stockholm. When he turned his head to the left, he saw a woman next to him making grocery list on the back of a folder. That and was startled to find that she was beautiful. So both of them had met 4 years earlier in a lecture hall in Cambridge, and they were attending a Bengali recital. And it seems like both of them were not interested in the recital because Shukumar couldn't make out what they were reciting. He didn't know Bengali for that matter. He was not much fluent in Bengali and he couldn't make out the Bengali diction. So he just read through the newspaper that he had in his hand. He was reading the temperatures in different cities, a random thing to do. And when he looked in his side, he saw a woman writing down her grocery list. So she too was not interested in the poem that was recited. And she was so beautiful, and he took note of her. Okay, he said. The first time we went out to dinner to the Portuguese place, I forgot to tip the waiter. I went back the next morning, found out its name, left money with the manager. So now Shukumar remembers the thing from their dating night. So the first time they went out to have dinner, he forgot to tip the waiter. So the next day he went to the same place, found out the name of the waiter, and then gave him a tip. You went all the way back to Somerville just to tip a waiter? I took a cab. Why did you forget to tip the waiter? The birthday candles had burned out and he pictured her face clearly in the dark. The wide tilting eyes, the full grape-toned lip, the fall at the age too from her high chair still visible as a coma on her chin. Each day Shukumar noticed her beauty, which had once overwhelmed him, seemed to fade. The cosmetics that had seemed superfluous were necessary now, not to improve her, but to define her somehow. Now again, Shukumar was a person who gave importance to small things, right? So he forgot to tip the waiter. He went back and tipped him, and it was a long ride from the place where he lived. Still he did that. And Shobha asks why he did that. But before saying an answer to that question, again Shukumar observed Shobha, and he found that he had once fallen in love with Shobha because she was so beautiful. Now her beauty is slowly fading. It seemed like her beauty is slowly fading. And now she needs cosmetics. It has become a necessity. Not to improve her beauty, but to define her features. By the end of the meal, I had a funny feeling that I might marry you. So Shobha asked him, why did you go and tip the waiter? And that too, why did you take a cab all the way to Somerville to tip a waiter? So Shukumar said that by the end of the meal, I had a strong feeling that I was going to marry you. He said, admitting to himself as well as to her for the first time. It must have distracted me. So again, Sukumar here comes across as a straightforward person. So he says that at the end of the meal, at the end of their dinner, their first dinner together, he had a feeling that he would marry this woman. So he forgot about tipping the waiter because he was so embroiled in that thought. ആ ഒരു ചിന്തയിൽ തന്നെ അയാൾ ആണ്ടുപോയത് കൊണ്ട് he forgot to tip the waiter. That's why he went there and tipped the waiter, because he knew that he was going to marry her. The next night, Shobha came home earlier than usual. Now, Shobha was very much interested in talking with Sukumar, and she was waiting for the game to happen. So the next night, Shobha came home earlier than usual. There was lamb left over from the evening before, and Shukumar heated it up so that they were able to eat by 7. He had gone out that day through the melting snow and bought a packet of taper candles from the corner store and batteries to fit the flashlight. He had the candles ready on the countertop, standing in brass holders like lotuses, but they ate under the glow of copper-shaded ceiling lamp that hung over the table. When they had finished eating, Shukumar was surprised to see that Shobha was stacking her plate on top of his and then carrying them over to the sink. He had amused. She would retreat to he had assumed that she would retreat to the living room behind her barricade of files. So again, Shobha came back home early and Shukumar purchased everything that was necessary during the blackouts. He purchased candles and even flashlights, and he even prepared the dinner early so that they would eat it before the blackout. Now, as soon as they stopped eating, Shobha took Shukumar's plate. She stacked it above her own plate and took it to the sink to wash it. So this was a thing that Shobha would normally not do, right? She was not the one who cleaned the utensils, but now Shobha was willing to take Shukumar's plate and clean it up. So there is a small change that is there in Shobha now. Don't worry about the dishes, he said, taking them from her hands. Now Shukumar wanted to clean the dishes. It seems silly not to, she replied, pouring a drop of detergent into a sponge. It's nearly 8 o'clock. So she says that it's silly that I don't wash plates. It seems silly not to wash the plates, right? We have just had dinner, so it's a necessity. We need to wash the plates. His heart, and then she said that we are nearing to 8 o'clock. Now, when she said that, his heart quickened. So soon the blackout would come. So his heart began to beat quickly. All day Shukumar had looked forward to the lights going out, and he thought about what Shobha had said the night before, about looking in his address book. He felt good to remember her as she was then, how bold yet nervous she had been when they first met, how hopeful. They stood side by side at the sink, their reflection fitting together in the frame of the window. It made him shy, the way he felt the first time they stood together in a mirror. He couldn't recall the last time they had been photographed. They had stopped attending parties, went nowhere together. The film in his camera still contained pictures of Shobha in the yard when she was pregnant. So, all day Shukumar had looked forward to the lights to go out so that they would have a conversation. He thought about what Shobha had said the night before, about looking in his address book. It felt good to remember that how she was back then. So he felt good to rekindle their relationship. So he was looking forward for this blackout to happen. It felt good to remember her as she was then, how bold yet nervous. So she was a very bold woman, but yet she was nervous. when they had first met. She was hopeful. They stood side by side at the sink. Now they stood side by side at the sink and they saw their reflections together in the frame of the window, and Shukumar suddenly felt shy. And he remembered the first time they saw their reflections in the mirror. And he thought about how he stopped photographing each other. They never went to parties now. They never attended parties now. They didn't go to parties now. And they never went anywhere together. And the film in the camera still contained the pictures of Shobha in the yard when she was pregnant. So the film in his camera still contained pictures of Shobha when she was pregnant. After finishing the dishes, they leaned against the counter, drying their hands on the end of a towel. At 8 o'clock, the house went black. Shukumar lit the wicks of the candle, impressed by their long, steady flames. "Let's sit outside," Shobha said. "I think it's still warm." They took a candle and sat down on the steps. It seemed strange to be sitting outside with patches of snow still on ground, but everyone was out of their houses tonight, the air fresh enough to make people restless. The screen doors opened and closed. A small parade of neighbors passed by with flashlights. "We are going to the bookstore to browse," a silver-haired man called out. He was walking with his wife, a thin woman in a windbreaker and holding a dog on leash. They were the Bradfords, and they had tucked a sympathy card into Shobha and Shukumar's mailbox back in September. "I hear they have got their power." So after finishing the dishes, they were ready for the blackout. It was 8 o'clock. The lights went out, and Shukumar was ready with the candles. But Shobha said that now we may sit outside. So she felt like sitting outside, and half of the neighborhood was outside too. And one of their neighbors passed by, and they invited them to visit a nearby library. The neighbor said that the light in the library would be on. The library might have power. So Shukumar says that they'd better have power, because otherwise you'll be browsing in the dark. You'll be browsing books in the dark. Now, these neighbors, they had sent a sympathy card over to Shobha and Shukumar when their child died, right? So they are still acclimatizing to the death of their child. The woman laughed, slipping her arm through the crook of her husband's elbow. "Want to join us?" "No thanks," Shobha and Shukumar called out together. It surprised Shukumar that his words matched hers. He wondered what Shobha would tell him in the dark. The worst possibilities had already run through his head. That she had had an affair, that she didn't respect him for being 35 and still a student. So now Shukumar thought about what they would be talking tonight, and he was thinking about all the worst things that she could say. She could say that she was having an affair, or she could say that she didn't respect him because he was still 35 and still a student. That she blamed him for being in Baltimore the way her mother did. But he knew those things weren't true. And even Shobha could blame him for not being with her when she went through miscarriage. Because Shobha's mother too pointed out it to him, right? He was not there when she was going through a miscarriage. So she could say all these terrible things. But he knew that that was not truth. But he knew that even though he was not with her, he felt guilty for the death of the child. She had been faithful as he had, and as had he. So Shobha was always faithful and Shukumar was faithful to her. She believed in him. It was she who had insisted he to go to Baltimore, and Shobha believed in Shukumar, and it was Shobha who insisted him to go to the Baltimore. So she won't be pointing fingers at him, and she won't cheat upon him. What didn't they know about each other? He knew she curled her fingers tightly when she slept, that her body twitched during bad dreams. He knew it was honeydew she favored over cantaloupe. She knew that when they returned from the hospital, the first thing she did when she walked into the house was pick out objects of theirs and toss them in a pile in the hallway. Books from the shelves, plants from the window sills, paintings from the walls, photos from the tables, pots and pans that hung from the hook over the stove. Shuguma had stepped out of her way, watching as she moved methodically from room to room. When she was satisfied, she stood there staring at the pile she had made, her lips drawn back in such distaste that Shukumar had thought she would spit. Then she started to cry. Now, Shukumar said that there wasn't anything that they hid from each other, and she always remained a faithful wife. So did he. He always remained a faithful husband. And the moment she returned back from the hospital after having that miscarriage, she took everything that belonged to them from each room, piled it up. Then she twitched her lips, and Shuguma thought that she was going to spit on the things that she had piled up, but still, instead of that, she cried. Instead of spitting or anything, she just sat there and cried. He began to feel cold as he sat there on the steps. He felt that he needed her to talk first in order to reciprocate. That time when your mother came to visit us, she said finally, when I said one night that I had to stay late at work, I went out with Gillian and had a martini. Now again Shobha revealed a truth about herself. She said that that night when your mom came to visit us, I said that I stayed all night at work, but in reality I went with Gillian, my friend, and had a martini. He looked at her profile. He looked at her face and her figure, the slender nose, the slightly masculine set of her jaw. He remembered that night well, eating with his mother, tired from teaching 2 classes back to back, wishing Shobha were there to say more of right things because he came up with only the wrong ones. It had been 12 years since his father had died, and his mother had come to spend 2 weeks with him and Shobha, so they could honor his father's memory together. Each night his mother cooked something his father had liked, but she was too upset to eat the dishes herself, and her eyes would well up as Shobha stroked her hand. It's so touching, Shobha had said to him at the time. Now he pictured Shobha with Gillian in a bar, stripped velvet sofas, the one they used to go after the movies, making sure she got her extra olive, asking Gillian for a cigarette. He imagined her complaining, and Gillian sympathizing about the visit from in-laws. It was Gillian who had driven Shobha to the hospital. So again, the talk about Gillian is going on, and he remembers that time from his past when his mother made a visit. Now, it was 12 years since his father had died, and the mother had made a visit so that she could remember her husband and honor his memory together. And each night his mother would cook, and she would cook food that his father loved the most. And Shobha used to say that how was a woman able to remember her husband's favorite food even now? And she found the entire thing so touching that Shukumar's mother was still preparing food that his father loved, even though she herself didn't eat much. Shobha found it to be touching. And then Shukumar remembered Gillian, and he thought how both Shobha and Gillian would have spent their night at a bar where they would be talking about in-laws and about the visits from the in-laws, complaining about their visits, sympathizing with them. And then he remembers that it was Gillian who took Shobha to the hospital. Your turn, she said, stopping his thoughts. At the end of their street, Shukumar heard sounds of a drill and electricians shouting over. He looked at the darkened facades of the houses lining the streets. Candles glowed in the windows of one. In spite of the warmth, smoke rose from the chimney. So at the end of the street, Shukumar heard sounds of a drill and the electricians shouting over it. So the electricians were fixing the electric lines, remember? And he looked the darkened facades of house lining the streets. Candles glowed in the windows of one. In spite of the warmth, smoke rose from the chimney. I cheated on my Oriental Civilization exam in college, he said. It was my last semester, my last set of exams. My father had died a few months before. I could see the blue book of the guy next to me. He was an American guy, a maniac. He knew Urdu and Sanskrit. I couldn't remember if the verses we had to identify was an example of a ghazal or not. I looked at his answer and copied it down. And now Shukumar reveals that he had cheated in one of his exams, especially an exam on Oriental civilization, an exam on Indian culture and Indian civilization, and he cheated by looking at the paper of an American guy. So he looked at the paper of an American guy, and this guy was well versed in Urdu and Sanskrit. Though Shukumar was an Indian, he was not well versed in the Indian languages, but this American was, so he copied it down. It happened over 15 years ago. He felt a relief now having told her. So this cheating incident happened 15 years ago, but he felt happy when he told it to her. She turned to him, looking not at his face but at his shoes, old moccasins he wore as if they were slippers, the leather at the back permanently flattened. He wondered if it bothered her, what he had said. She took his hand and pressed it. You didn't have to tell me why you did it, she said, moving closer to him. So Shukumar cheated on the exam because his father had just died and he was still in grief. So Shobha said that you don't have to tell me why you did it. You don't have to tell me why you cheated. They sat together until 9 o'clock when the lights came on. They heard some people across the street clapping from their porch, the television being turned down. The Bradfords walked back down the street, eating ice cream cones and waving. Shobha and Shukumar waved back. Then they stood up, his hand still in hers, and went inside. Somehow, without saying anything, it had turned into an exchange of confessions, the little ways they had hurt or disappointed each other and themselves. So again, this is the nature of their conversations, right? So their conversations have turned into confessions, little ways in which they hurt each other. So in the second day, Shobha revealed that when Shukumar's mother came over, instead of working overtime, she said that she was working overtime in the workplace, but instead of being at the workplace, she went to a bar along with her friend Gillian. So that was something which was personal, right? A little way in which she hurted Shukumar or disappointed him. And then Shukumar told about the way in which he disappointed himself by cheating in an examination. The following day, Shukumar thought for hours about what to say to her. Now, the following day again, Shukumar was expecting to talk to her. He was torn between admitting that he had once ripped out a photo of a woman in one of the fashion magazines she used to subscribe to and carried it in his books for a week, or saying that he really hadn't lost the sweater vest she bought him for their third wedding anniversary, but had exchanged it for cash at Filene's, and that he had gotten drunk along in the middle of the day at hotel bar for their first anniversary. Shobha had cooked 10-course dinner just for him. The vest depressed him. My wife gave me a sweater vest for our anniversary, he complained to the bar attendant, his head heavy with cognac. What do you expect? The bar attendant had replied. You are married. Now the things Shukumar hid from Shobha was again intensely personal, right? Once he took the picture of a woman from a woman's magazine and he carried it around like a picture of a woman from a woman's magazine, and then he carried it around like a fetish. And another time, what he did was that he sold the sweater that Shobha had bought him for their third anniversary. And on their first anniversary, Sukumar got drunk because Shobha gifted him a sweater and he was not happy with the gift. So he got drunk and he told the bar attender that it is my wedding anniversary and my wife gave me a sweater, a vest. And the bar attender replied that, what did you expect? You are married. As for the picture of the woman, he didn't know why he had ripped it out. She wasn't as pretty as Shobha. He wore a white sequins dress and had a sullen face and lean mannish legs. Her bare arms were raised, her fist around her head as if it were about to punch herself in the ears. It was an advertisement for a stocking. Shobha had been pregnant at that time, her belly suddenly immense, to the point where Sukumar no longer wanted to touch her. The first time he saw the picture, he was lying in the bed next to her, watching her as she read. When he noticed the magazine in the recycling pile, he found the woman and tore out the page as carefully as he could. For about a week, he allowed himself a glimpse each day. He felt an intense desire for the woman, but it was a desire that turned to disgust after a minute or two. It was the closest he had come to infidelity. So Shukumar never cheated on his wife, but once he had ripped off the picture of a woman from a magazine. And he remembers the woman. The woman was not as pretty as Shobha. She wore a white sequins dress and she had a very sullen face and lean mannish legs. Her arms were raised and her fist was around her head as if she was going to punch someone. So it was a very mannish figure, but still he hid this picture for some time, and he used to take glimpse of this picture each day because at around that time Shobha was pregnant and he couldn't touch her. So that might have made him look at the picture of this woman. So that was close to what he came to infidelity or what he came to cheating. He never cheated on her, he just looked at the picture of a random woman from a magazine. He told Shobha about the sweater on the third night. So on the third night, he decided to tell Shobha about the sweater incident. The picture on the fourth. She said nothing as he spoke, expressed no protest or reproach. She simply listened and then she took his hand, pressing it as she had before on the third night. She told him that once after a lecture they had attended, she let him speak to the chairman of his department without telling him that he had a dab of fat on his chin. So again, the thing that Shobha said on the third night was that once after a lecture that they both attended, Shobha sent Shukumar to see the chairman of his department, and when Shukumar went to meet the chairman, there was something in his chin, a dab of food in his chin, and though she saw it, she didn't tell him about it. She had been irritated with him for some reason, and so she had let him go on and on about securing his fellowship for the following semester without putting a finger to her own chin as a signal. The fourth night, she said that she never liked the one poem he had ever published in his life in a literary magazine in Utah. He had written the poem after meeting Shobha. He added that she found the poem sentimental. So again, Shobha says that once when Shukumar went to meet his chairman, she saw that there was a dab of food on his chin, but she did nothing to remove it because she was angry at him because Shukumar at that time was going on and on about a fellowship that he had to secure. So she thought that let him go with a dab of food on his chin. In the fourth night, she said that she didn't like the one poem that Shukumar had written and published. So Shukumar had published a poem in a magazine in Utah, and it was a poem about Shobha, and she didn't like the one poem that he had written about her. Something happened when the house was dark. They were able to talk to each other. The third night after supper they had sat together on the sofa, and once it was dark he began kissing her awkwardly on her forehead and her face, and though it was dark he closed his eyes and knew that she did too. The fourth night they walked carefully upstairs to the bed, feeling together for the first step with their feet before the landing, and making love with a desperation they had forgotten. She wept without sound and whispered his name and traced his eyebrows with her fingers in the dark. As he made love to her he wondered what he would say to her the night, and what she would say, the thought of it exciting him. "Hold me," he said, "hold me in your arms." By the time the lights came back on downstairs they had fallen asleep. So on the third night they made love to each other. So for the first time after September, they connected with each other on the third night and they made love to each other. The morning of the fifth night, Shukumar found another notice from the electric company in the mailbox. So on the morning of the fifth night, Shukumar found another notice from the electric company. The line had been repaired ahead of schedule, it said. He was disappointed. He planned on making shrimp malai for Shobha, but when he arrived at the store he didn't feel like cooking anymore. It wasn't the same, he thought, knowing that the lights wouldn't go out. In the store the shrimp looked grey and thin. The coconut milk tin was dusty and overpriced. Still he bought them, along with a beeswax candle and 2 bottles of wine. Now on the fifth night, Shukumar learns that the line has been repaired and they no longer will be facing blackouts. So he felt disappointed because he was looking forward to this blackout so that he could connect with Shobha once again. And he wanted to make malai shrimp, like malai paneer or butter paneer malai shrimp. And he was so disappointed that when he reached out to the store and tried to buy um, the shrimp looked grey, and the coconut milk, the tin can containing the coconut milk, was dusty and overpriced. Still he bought a beeswax candle. He thought that they would have their last blackout together, so he bought a beeswax candle and 2 bottles of wine. She came home at 7:30. "I suppose this is the end of our game," he said when he saw her reading the notice. Now Shobha also entered and she read the notice, and Shukumar said that now this is the end of our game. We no longer will be telling secrets to each other. We won't be confessing truth. She looked at him. "You can still light the candles if you want." She hadn't been to gym tonight. She wore a suit beneath the raincoat. Her makeup had been retouched recently. So now even Shobha was looking forward for the night, right? She didn't visit the gym. She came home earlier than usual, and she was wearing a suit inside her raincoat, and she had just touched up her makeup. Usually she don't touch up her makeup. Now she had retouched her makeup. So she was preparing herself for the night. When she went upstairs to change, Shukumar poured himself some wine and put on a record. The Lioness Monk album he knew she liked. When she came downstairs they ate together. She didn't thank him or complimented him. They simply ate in the darkened room in the glow of a beeswax candle. They had survived a difficult time. They finished off the shrimp. They finished off the first bottle of wine and moved on to the second. They sat together until the candle had nearly burnt away. She shifted in her chair, and Shukumar thought that she was about to say something. But instead she blew out the candle, stood up, and turned down the light switch and sat down again. So now they were not facing any blackouts, but still they had a candlelit dinner. And Shukumar thought that she would say something, but instead of saying something, she stood up and turned down the light switch. "Shouldn't we keep the lights off?" Shukumar asked. She set her plates aside, clasped her hands on the table. "I want you to see my face when I tell you this," she said gently. His heart began to pound. The day she told him she was pregnant, she had used the same words, saying them in a gentle way, turning off the basketball game he had been watching on television. He hadn't been prepared then. Now he was. Now it seems like Shobha has to say something, right? And it seems like Shobha is about to reveal a truth because she says that she wants to look him in the eye and say this. And Sukumar felt something odd because earlier she had done the same gesture. At that time, she revealed that she was pregnant, and his heart began to pound thinking about what she might say now. And he vividly remembers the time in which she revealed that she was pregnant. She had used the same words, saying them in the same gentle way, turning off the basketball game he had been watching on the television. He hadn't been prepared then, now he was. Then he was not prepared to hear whatever that Shobha was to say. He was not prepared to hear that she was pregnant because he was still a student, right? So he was not prepared to hear that she was pregnant, but now he was prepared to whatever that Shobha had to say. Only he didn't want her to be pregnant again. He didn't want to have to pretend to be happy. Now Sukumar didn't want her to be pregnant again, and he didn't want to pretend to be happy. I have been looking for an apartment and I have found one, she said, narrowing her eyes on something it seemed behind his left shoulder. It was nobody's fault, she continued. They had been through enough. She needed some time alone. She had money saved up from a security deposit. The apartment was on Beacon Hill, so she could walk to work. She had signed the lease that night before coming home. So that is the grand revelation that she had to make, that she is moving out, that they are breaking up. And she had purchased an apartment on her own and she would be moving out. She had purchased an apartment from her security deposit. She had even signed the lease papers, and the apartment is nearer to her workplace, so she would be able to walk to her work. She wouldn't look at him, but he stared at her. It was obvious that she had rehearsed the lines. All this time she had been looking for an apartment, testing the water pressure, asking a realtor if heat and hot water were included in the rent. It sickened Sukumar knowing that she had spent these past evenings preparing for a life without him. He was relieved, and yet he was sickened. This was what she had been trying to tell him for the past 4 evenings. This was the point of her game. So Sukumar felt cheated in a way. He felt so sad because Shobha has been rehearsing it all along, and she even rehearsed the lines. It seemed to Sukumar that she might have rehearsed the lines. And she had been looking for the apartment. She has been checking for the water pressure and the water supply and everything. And in the past few evenings, she had been preparing Sukumar for a life without her, and she herself was preparing for a life without him. And this entire game was concocted by her so that she could tell him this truth. Now it was his turn to speak. There was something he had sworn he would never tell her, and for 6 months he had done his best to block it from its mind. Before the ultrasound, she had asked the doctor not to tell her the sex of their child, and Sukumar had agreed. She had wanted it to be a surprise. Later, those few times they talked about what had happened, she said at least they had spared the knowledge. In a way, she almost took pride in her decision, for it enabled her to seek refuge in a mystery. He knew, she assumed it was a mystery for him too. He had arrived too late from Baltimore when it was all over, and she was lying on the hospital bed, but he hadn't. He had arrived early enough to see their baby and to hold him before they cremated him. At first, he had recoiled at the suggestion, but the doctor said holding the baby might help him with the process of grieving. Shobha was asleep. The baby had been cleaned off, his bulbous lid shut tight to the world. Our baby was a boy, he said. His skin was more red than brown. He had black hair on his head. He weighed almost 5 pounds. His fingers were curled shut, just like yours in the night. Shobha looked at him now, her face contorted with sorrow. He had cheated on an exam, ripped a picture of a woman out of a magazine. He had returned a sweater and got drunk in the middle of the day instead. These were the things he had told her. He had held his son, who had known life only within her, against his chest in a darkened room in an unknown wing of the hospital. He had held him until a nurse knocked and took him away, and he promised himself that day he would never tell Shobha because he still loved her then, and it was the one thing in her life that she had wanted to be a surprise. Shukumar stood up, stacked his plate on top of hers, carried the plates to the sink, but instead of running the tap, he looked out the window. Outside, the evening was still warm, and the Bradfords were walking arm in arm. As he watched the couple, the room went dark, and he spun around. Shobha had turned the lights off. She came back to the table and sat down. After a moment, Shukumar joined her. They wept together for the things they now knew. So, what had happened? Shobha revealed that she is moving out and that she is breaking up with him. And Shukumar revealed that he knew the sex of their child. Shobha always wanted that to remain a mystery. Shobha just wanted to meet the child after the childbirth. She just wanted to know the sex of the child at the time of childbirth. But their child was born a stillborn, and Shukumar came earlier from Baltimore, and he was able to hold their child in his arm. The child was a boy, and Shukumar was able to hold him in his hand. At first, he was reluctant to hold the child, but then the doctor said to him that if you hold the child, it would help you with the grief. So Shukumar held him in his hand for some time, and then the nurse came and took the child away from him. So he knew the sex of the child, and he revealed it to her. Our baby was a boy. And more than anything, more than any of the lies that Shukumar had told her, all the revelations that he had made so far, this hurt her the most because she always wanted this to be a surprise. And Shobha was a woman who planned everything ahead in life. She wanted to know the sex of the baby, but only at the time of the birth, and it always remained a mystery for her. And that too helped her grieve the death of their unborn child. She was able to move on because she never knew the sex of their child. But all along, Shukumar knew the sex of their child, and it might have haunted him. And the fact that she never knew this, it helped her cope with the grief. But finally, now they know a lot about themselves. Now they know that Shobha wanted to leave this relationship, and Shukumar was not ready for such a revelation, so he reveals that their child, their stillborn, was a boy. Now, there are two possible endings for the story. The story remains open-ended. Either Shobha and Shukumar can live together after knowing all these things about themselves, or they could grow apart. But the blackouts had brought them together, and in the end, Shobha turns off the light and they come together and grieve. They mourn together. Maybe they might give another chance to their relationship. Maybe that's what is being hinted at. But Jhumpa Lahiri leaves it open-ended because it's up to us, the readers, to discern its ending. So it's a very poignant tale, a very sad tale about guilt, about losing, about planning ahead for the future. And one of the major themes of this novel is difficulty of communication, the difficulty of a couple to communicate with each other. They talk to each other only during the blackouts, and the blackouts bring them together. And that's the only time they communicate with each other effectively. So these are some of the major themes of the story. Guilt and grief over the death of a stillborn, difficulty of communication between a young couple, the limits of planning, Even though you plan ahead in life, even though you plan everything ahead in life, nothing goes as per planned. And sometimes you may be struck with catastrophe, and even then you need to move on. That is the moral of the story. So that's it. That's the themes. And one of the questions that they might ask is about the blackouts and the treatment of blackouts in the story. I have given you a note based on that. Please do refer to it. അതായിരിക്കും അവരെപ്പോഴും ചോദിക്കാൻ സാധ്യതയുള്ള question. Other than that, please go through the themes of this story. Themes ചോദിക്കാൻ സാധ്യതയുണ്ട്. Indian literature ആയതുകൊണ്ട് തന്നെ അവർ themes ചോദിക്കും. അപ്പോൾ ഇതൊക്കെ ഒന്ന് നോക്കി വെക്കുക. Thank you for listening. Take care.